What's up, world? I'm Matt Newberg from Hungry, and this is The Feed. Each episode, we'll dive into conversations with the industry insiders who are leveraging technology to shape the way we eat. On today's episode of The Feed, I sat down with Alex Blum, founder and CEO of Relay, a last-mile logistics company that consolidates restaurants' delivery orders across every single channel. In this episode, we'll talk about how restaurants can save money by switching to self-delivery, how Relay is able to more efficiently batch orders compared to DoorDash and Uber Eats, and the impact of the recent minimum wage legislation in New York City on the entire ecosystem. Well, Alex, it's really awesome to have you here. I've been wanting to interview you for a while, so thank you for making the time. I would love for us to kind of go back in time into the time machine, and take us back 10 years ago. Tell us what the landscape of food delivery was like, and then kind of that problem that, sparked the idea for Relay that you discovered.
Yeah, and Matt, thanks for having me. Big fan of the podcast and the newsletter, and Hungry TV. So thanks for making some time to have me on the podcast. 10 years ago, I had recently moved to New York and had heard, as the rest of the world knew at the time, or has always known, that New York is a huge food delivery city, and that you could get anything delivered at any time of the day, which was true. Somewhat is still true today, but less so than it used to be. And sort of came to this realization that, this is 2012, by the way, came to the realization that every single restaurant that did delivery had to hire a corresponding literal team of delivery couriers to manage that delivery process. And this is the era of Lyft and Uber and rideshare really taking off, and this idea of being able to connect resources via an app. And I think really the Uber for X sort of was coined around this time. And so it was sort of one of those where it's like, wait a moment, if all the couriers are employed by the restaurant, then that's super inefficient, because they are going out, dropping food off, and then have to come back sort of inherently to the restaurant they started from. And if you had a network of restaurants and a pool, like a shared pool of couriers, you can route them to the nearest restaurant from their last drop off. You can eliminate what in logistics or in operations research is called a deadhead, which is that empty-handed return trip.
Right.
And so that was the original thesis and premise. That still is true today, which is, I think, pretty unique. That hasn't really changed. That's a big part of our draw. But yeah, that's basically, I set out, our first restaurant was just down the street from my apartment for good reason. Literally on the weekends, started knocking on doors, talking to restaurant owners, and then launched the app. I was our first delivery person. Started doing deliveries in November of 2014, freezing, the end of November. And so just remember delivering food. It was sleeting in mid-December in New York, and it's just miserable. And basically it was if this doesn't take off in the next 6 weeks, I'm out. And thankfully it was fine. But yeah, sort of that's part of the origin story.
Amazing. Yeah, I remember that time vividly in New York, where I was a heavy Seamless user back in the day, and restaurants didn't have their own. Many restaurants had to hire their own staffs. Motorino was one of the ones I ordered from a lot. We talked about this. Yeah. And they had a dozen guys hanging out there. But for a lot of restaurants, it didn't make sense for these guys to sit on their hands, and it's probably hard to source, reliable workers. And how do you make this work? And this was in the days where the marketplaces were just demand, right? When they were actually profitable, because they didn't have to do this. So you come in and take this off their hands. Just give us the quick pitch to restaurants, and then maybe share just some of the stats of how big Relay has gotten as far as number of markets and GMV, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. So here, I'll start with that first, if it's okay, and then give you the high level of the offering, I guess. So today, Relay, born in New York, 2014, we're in 5 markets. We're in Chicago, New York, Philly, DC, and Miami. Those are 5 of the
Yep.
10 biggest cities in the country. We are a urban, like dense urban environment, last mile fulfillment service. We have delivered 1.5 billion in GMV to date, 41 million orders over that time frame. We're a profitable company, which is, I think, another rarity. There's a lot of things that make us unique, and that's another one. In our space, everybody sort of famously, it's like food delivery. Like, is it ever going to make any money? We've been making money for many years now, and really, what we do that is unique is so we're a B2B service. We offer fulfillment to restaurants primarily, and what we'll do is we'll deliver food of two types for a restaurant. One is the first party order, which is the order that a consumer transacts directly when the consumer transacts directly
Right.
with the restaurant. So McDonald's.com, for example, and then something that, and a lot of people do that. Something that we do that few do is we also deliver third party orders. And so we will come in and deliver for a restaurant. We will deliver their Uber, DoorDash, and Grubhub orders. Many listeners probably right now are thinking, well, wait a second. I thought Uber did those orders, that Uber delivered the Uber orders and DoorDash delivered the DoorDash orders. And you're right. But the apps also have this feature called self-delivery or merchant-led delivery. It has many names, whereby a restaurant can basically say, I want to have my menu displayed on your app. I want consumers on DoorDash to be able to order from my restaurant, but I will take control of the delivery process after an order has been placed.
Right.
And so that's sort of what we plug in.
It's very similar to the new model that Domino's is testing with Uber, right? Uber does the
Yep.
demand generation and Domino's fulfills, but you're offering this to any restaurant, and it's something that they can call up their delivery marketplace and say, hey, I want to switch from, demand and logistics to just doing demand, correct? Like they can just literally just ask them to like change their commission, because half of the commission is going to the last mile, and then the other half is like supposedly marketing. When it comes to regulating these fee caps that we saw over the pandemic, a lot of it was like, okay, we have to break out these two components. Let's just talk a little bit about this, because I think a lot of people get confused about it.
Yeah, Matt, that's exactly right. And I'm glad that you bring up the Domino's example. That's the most recent one. Jimmy John's also. Jimmy John's is probably a pioneer at the enterprise of experimenting or really leaning into it. This is what they do, leaning into self-delivery. If you order Jimmy John's on DoorDash, a Jimmy John's employee with like the Jimmy John's polo rings your doorbell, not a DoorDash employee, or sorry, contractor. And so what is I think important to highlight, right? You have Jimmy John's and Domino's, which are two concepts that effectively have invented delivery, right? Like they have classically always been delivery brands. If they are leaning into self-delivery, then I think for other brands, that says a lot about this model. Like if the people that have been doing it the longest and presumably understand delivery the best, if they're leaning into self-delivery, I think there's a path to follow there, is essentially what I'm getting at.
Yeah. So what are the implications of I mean, I think what you're offering is a tweak on that, because they're actually hiring their own drivers, right? They've had these legacy businesses where they pick up the phone and call Domino's, and you'd expect a guy in a Domino's pizza car with a little thing on the roof. I don't know what those things are called, but those little those signs, the tents on the roof of their car, coming and pulling up and delivering you a pizza in a branded Domino's sleeve, and the guy's wearing the uniform and everything. And that's part of the whole experience. But with you, you're essentially batching it for all small and larger chains as well. So I guess talk about that, and like also what is the net impact to restaurants' bottom line and consumers' wallets when it comes to the economic implications of this.
Yeah, it's card topper, by the way.
Car top.
The pizza. Yeah, I was struggling to remember. Um, so, yeah, that's exactly right. I'd like to think that we are sort of a middle ground option. Like, you could do self delivery and actually hire your own team of drivers to fulfill those orders. That's sort of one end of the spectrum. The opposite end of the spectrum is just completely outsource everything to Uber, DoorDash, and Grubhub and their drivers. And so I think we are a middle ground offering where we combine the best of both worlds. And something that you sort of touched on was combining across the stack. A big reason merchants want to work with us is because we can save them money. There's a couple ways we do that. One is basically Uber is more convenient. I'm not going to deny that, right? Like, just you sign up with Uber, they handle everything, and sort of you can sort of sit back as a restaurant owner. The downside to that is that it's really expensive. And so, like in many other things out there, when you decouple offerings and sort of build them yourself, you usually are able to reap unit economic benefits from doing that. And so this is exactly that play where you decouple the demand gen offering that Uber has, which is that the advertising and the marketing, from the logistics. It's going to be a little bit less convenient, and I'm happy to talk about that. It's going to be a little bit less convenient, but the unit economic benefits for a merchant are massive. We are classically able to save a merchant 50% of their Uber bill when they go through this, and happy to explain that in a little bit. But the other way we're able to save restaurants money is our last mile fulfillment is just so much more efficient. And the way that works, and if there's probably people at home saying or thinking that that's impossible. Uber has really smart engineers, and a lot of them, and same with DoorDash and Grubhub. The way we're able to save merchants money on the fulfillment side is we are consolidating this fragmented front end. And so if you have somebody that orders on DoorDash and another person that orders on Uber Eats from the same popular pizzeria on a Friday night, both of those apps have to pay one person, so two different people, to go out and fulfill those orders. Whereas in our model, that pizzeria worked with us, we would be able to send one courier to pick up both of those orders as long as they were going in the same direction. And so we're able to bundle, basically, instead of just siloed within DoorDash or within Uber, which is how they operate, we're able to cross the stack.
Right. Yeah. We're going to definitely get into the batching, and that makes a lot of sense. Just like restaurants were really quick to jump on this aggregator trend of, signing up for Ordermark or Olo or DeliverAct to consolidate all those inbound orders into a single POS system or a single tablet. You're doing that for the last mile, essentially, where you're saying, no matter where this order comes in, we're going to have a single set fleet that's available to you that's going to be able to pick up any order, no matter where it comes in from. Someone comes in on your website, orders directly on sweetgreen.com, they're going to be able to have it fulfilled for the same price as anyone who's going to come in from the apps. Essentially, we're gonna have the same couriers from our fleet basically working with you to pick up all those orders, no matter the marketplace. If you're on DoorDash, Uber Eats, Grubhub, it doesn't matter. It's the same relationship with us, same cost, right?
That's exactly right, Matt. That's right.
And it's a flat fee, right? You just, within a certain radius, you're charging a flat rate per merchant.
That's exactly right. Yep, that's right. So we don't charge based on subtotal. It basically costs us the same to deliver a $12 or $12 burrito than a $50 plate of sushi.
Got it. So when I'm a customer and I'm going through here and I'm seeing, the delivery fees that get tacked on at the end,
Yeah.
how does this change if the merchant's using Relay versus they're using, DoorDash or Uber Eats?
Yep, that's a great question. So there are a couple of transformative differences in this model. One of them is the delivery fee. And so now, if a merchant signs up for the first time, the merchant is now able to set and collect directly from the consumer a delivery fee. And so before, when Uber or DoorDash did the last mile, did the delivery, basically Uber and DoorDash would, at their own discretion, set a delivery fee and keep it. But now the restaurant's in control, the restaurant's in the driver's seat. And what will classically happen is, say our fee is $5, a restaurant will charge $2.99 to help offset our cost. And so the net cost of delivery is like $2 or a dollar and a penny. And the savings that we're able to generate by cutting their commission down from 30 to 15%, which is sort of the market rate when they switch to self-delivery on Uber and DoorDash's commission, is the savings. And so by and large, restaurants are coming out on top and saving money on the last mile fulfillment when they work with us. And the consumer now has a $2.99, call it in this example, delivery fee that they pay directly to the restaurant.
So how much does the consumer end up saving as a result, would you say?
Yeah, so it's really variable, right? When Uber or DoorDash set the fees, like if it's raining, those fees go up.
Right.
So it's based on dynamic pricing principles. But on average, we're saving consumers, $3-4 easy.
Got it. And then I also imagine that when you turn on self-delivery, now the dynamics change when it comes to like, okay, I have to go deliver this, so now I need more data on like calling this customer, getting their address, etc. So now what else does that unlock? What is switching to self-delivery and using Relay unlock from that perspective?
Yeah, so great question. One of the first sort of reactions restaurant owners have when they switch to self-delivery and those first orders start coming in is, oh my God, like I can see the customer's address and phone number now. And so because the restaurant or a third party has to actually go out into the world and ring a doorbell and call a customer when they're downstairs, the apps provide that data that they used to not provide to a merchant. And so merchants can utilize this for a number of things, but like one of them, without being super creative, right? One of them is it allows you to identify uniquely who your customers are. And so and there's a really good reason why the apps, like, let's make no mistake, like there's a really good reason why Uber and DoorDash don't present this data off the shelf as is, because if you're a restaurant owner and say you decide to run a promotion on Uber and you see that your sales go up, right? But it's a really nebulous, there's a lot of opacity there. So you run this promo, you spend $10,000 across all your locations, and you see that your sales go up, but then they slump down again. The data that you'd have with self-delivery would enable you to see who these customers are that are ordering and identify, are these people that basically only order when I have a coupon out there? What's the LTV of these customers? And essentially like what the actual ROI, the granular ROI on that marketing spend was. And so those are some of the sort of great ways in which restaurants can leverage this data.
Great stuff, and it's definitely something that's like it's a hot topic. Who owns the customer at the end of the day, right? And it's they're providing you a service. It's supposed to be incremental. It's their customers, but when you say, okay, well, we're gonna actually do all the heavy lifting, that dynamic definitely changes, and you flip that switch. It's a whole new dynamic, a whole new relationship you're kind of embarking on.
Yeah. But Matt, to be sure, right? Like I'm not saying that I don't consider that customer to be a DoorDash or an Uber customer. DoorDash and Uber have spent a lot of money to get that customer onto that platform, right?
Right.
What one of the uses of this data is to empower restaurants to make informed decisions, right? Like if you're
Yeah.
spending basically like the way it's set up currently,
Yeah.
and it's more nuanced than this, but like at a high level, you spend 10 grand advertising on Uber and you see your sales go up, and that's good. But like if how would you feel if you knew that your sales go up because you just attracted all these people that are chasing a coupon and they
Right.
have no intention of ordering
Right.
from your restaurant again? Would that make you feel differently or think differently about
Yeah.
doing another $10,000 campaign in 6 months, right? And so that's sort of what I'm trying to get at. Yeah, it's
Totally.
just restaurants are truly just flying in the dark when it comes to that.
Right. No, it's like Groupon, right? You don't want to throw good money after bad. We don't want to just put everything on
Exactly.
sale for no reason.
Exactly.
Right. Um, so so you alluded to the fact that DoorDash and Uber both have their own logistics as a service, right? DoorDash Drive, Uber Direct. Um, and that's kind of another route that they could take as well. Obviously, they won't save money on the marketplace, but they would be able to fulfill those first party orders. But why is it a good idea for them to work with someone else like you when it comes to those marketplace orders? In addition to the economic benefit, right, and the data, like
Yep.
what is the like why else should they consider Relay?
Yeah. So basically, Uber and DoorDash, as you said, have a white label last mile fulfillment solution. Like you can basically, as if you're a restaurant, you can tap into the drivers on the DoorDash or Uber network. An actual example is if you order on Chipotle.com, DoorDash Drive does that last mile fulfillment. So if you order on Chipotle.com and get a burrito there, it's still DoorDash doing the last mile fulfillment because Chipotle has tapped into this DoorDash Drive offering. Um, and I think that's really dangerous. And a big part of our thesis is that there is this competitive tension between DoorDash and Chipotle. DoorDash wants consumers ordering on the DoorDash app, the marketplace, and not on Chipotle.com.
Right, the take rate is higher.
Of course, and it's their customer. And maybe if I get you, instead of ordering from Chipotle and you order on DoorDash, maybe I can get you to spend money, on some other restaurant, right? So
Right.
there's opportunity there. For merchants that don't have a fleet, however, there's few options that offer really national coverage. It's basically down to DoorDash and Uber. And again, there's this crazy competitive tension because both of those apps own and operate consumer-facing marketplaces, as do the merchants that tap into their white label solution. And so I think there's what I've always called it is letting the fox in the hen house. Like who's to know? Like in this case, right? Chipotle is paying DoorDash and giving DoorDash all the information that DoorDash would need to be able to uniquely identify a customer, right? And know whether that Chipotle.com customer has a DoorDash app. I'm not saying that this happens, but it would make me really uncomfortable if I were Chipotle, sort of knowing that basically my competitor is handling the last mile fulfillment of my orders. And so we've stood up, we've trying to stand up a alternative that's agnostic. We do not own a consumer facing app. And in fact, our incentives are a lot more aligned with Chipotle in this case, because Relay wants to drive as much traffic or hopes to drive as much traffic to Chipotle.com, because that means that we have diversity in our revenue streams as opposed to just
Right.
like all of our revenue coming from DoorDash, Uber, and Grubhub, right? And so in that sense, we're a lot more aligned with the merchant than Uber or DoorDash, which I'm sure like those contracts probably have really lengthy, wording around data usage and sort of what's permitted or not. My take there is just like, why even partner with somebody if you have to have these presumably,
Stipulations, yeah.
yeah, exactly, right?
Right.
It seems fraught to me.
Totally. Yeah, it's a lot cleaner to just outsource it to someone who has no skin in the game when it comes to this wall that gets created between first party and third party, and who owns which customer, right? It's very messy.
Yeah,
Fascinating.
I'll add to that though, Matt. Like I'll be honest. That's been a big sort of thesis that we've been pushing and trying to get in front of these mega brands. It has been, it just sort of, the message hasn't landed. We've spoke to a lot of folks, and it's really, I could say it's not a good analogy, but it's you have folks from these huge brands sort of saying like, we'll do anything to try and like distance ourselves or put some sort of barrier or buffer between like Uber, DoorDash, and Grubhub and like our customers, and like we want to try to reclaim delivery, we want more data, we want to try and lower our costs. So they say all these things, they're saying all the right things.
Right.
And then we meet with them, we talk to them about how we can help them achieve those goals. And it's just like, that sounds super difficult and like complicated. And it's just like, it is the analogy it's again, it's not a good analogy, but it's like somebody that wants to lose weight. And he's like, all right, you want to lose weight? Like, here's your diet plan. Here's your exercise plan. Like, we're starting Monday at 7 a.m. And they're like, oh, well, I don't mean it that way. Like, there's got to be like some sort of like TV show I can watch or like a pill that I can eat.
Right.
To like help me lose weight, right?
Right.
Like I'm talking
all
about
in
like
one
an easy
solution.
Yeah, exactly. I'm talking about like an easy way out. And it's like,
Sure.
Look, like the restaurant industry has painted themselves into a corner, and that's it. Like there's no easy way out. Like you're gonna have to fight out of it now. And I guess we have found that the fighting spirit is weaker than we were expecting, or the pain that the apps are inflicting on restaurants has subsided, or they're like used to it, I guess, at this point. I don't know.
Yeah, people just they want one contact, and if something goes wrong, they don't want to have to call like 3 different people or whatever and try to pinpoint the needle in the haystack.
Yeah.
That's just my guess.
It might be more convenient, but like we're saving, local restaurants hundreds of thousands of dollars a year that have like one location. Right, so if you multiply that across the 3,000, 4,000 Chipotle locations, the savings could be, staggering.
Yeah, straight to the bottom line. Makes a lot of sense. So I want to compare what's going on here with food delivery to other markets, because I think it's interesting. Because the space feels so competitive and so secretive, and meanwhile we have, I guess, there's been similar dynamics with Amazon, and I really want to talk about that. But like generally in e-commerce, you can essentially pick whatever parcel, like whatever logistics service 3PL you want, right? You go on Shopify to any e-commerce vendor, right, merchant, and then you say, I want fast shipping, or maybe it's going to choose some sort of local courier. You want like free shipping, it's going to be like USPS, or it'll be like 2-day UPS, right? So it's like 3 different options. Here, it's got to come instantly. It's got to be on demand, obviously, when we're talking about restaurants. So I guess, why is platform agnostic fulfillment so controversial here, but not in broader e-com? Let's just start there.
Yeah, I think the like distinction there, Matt, is... So let's go back in time a little bit. Like, so Amazon used to contract with UPS, right? And they have since dropped that partnership in a major way. But for Amazon, it's sort of like an easy decision to figure out who they partner with, whether it's like FedEx or UPS or some other or a plethora of small local players. The like distinction there is that UPS doesn't also own and operate an e-com marketplace, right? And so like what happens in like if you're Chipotle, right? You can say, well, I want to like tap into Uber, and I'm not trying to pick on Chipotle. It's just like a well-known example. There's the realities that honestly the reality is that like any big name, whether it's McDonald's, Sweetgreen, you go down the list. The reality is that they've all sort of cozied up and partnered with one of these big apps. So it's pretty universal. But
get the best rates.
Yeah, exactly. You get the best rates and sort of, I guess, pretend that they don't operate also a consumer-facing app
Right.
that like they totally want customers, your customers also, to be ordering from instead of your
Right.
own, consumer facing. And so that's sort of the distinction in the Amazon example. And I think that's why for e-commerce that problem has sort of been solved for a long time. Like logistics only as a service have existed for a long, long time, and then e-commerce grew and appeared, right? And so they just naturally tapped into those players. Uber and DoorDash and Grubhub basically invented the category of food delivery, and they've
Yeah.
always had the consumer facing, and they've always had, well, at least in DoorDash and Uber's case, they've always had the fulfillment side as well. So
Right. So when it
I
comes
don't know if
to
that, yeah,
when it comes to Amazon, we see in the news.
yeah,
I think in 2020, something happened in the EU where they were penalizing merchants who were not using their own fulfillment services. Right? They have, they can store your products and they can deliver them with their own fleet. Right?
yeah,
And then now we have like another antitrust case where they're trying to make a case that says that Amazon is like penalizing U.S. merchants on its third-party third-party marketplace, right? The products it doesn't, have on its balance sheet. It's just products it's aggregating.
yep,
That they're basically trying to get everyone to use their services, store their products in their warehouses, use their courier services, etc.
Yeah.
And arguing that there should be a free market here. So, what are your thoughts on this as a precedent? We'll definitely get into some of the stuff that's going on with food delivery, but just looking at Amazon, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think so. This is relevant to what's going on in our world, in really similar ways, and I'd say even in worse ways in the food delivery space. Basically, what the FTC has alleged, or sorry, they're going to allege. There's a there's news stories that the FTC is going to bring a antitrust claim against Amazon for essentially exerting pressure on its merchants that sell widgets on Amazon, utilizing the Amazon last mile fulfillment option as opposed to UPS or whatever other alternative that merchant might want. So they're using the consumer marketplace power that they have to try and force merchants to use their fulfillment services. And I think we're seeing the exact same thing play out in the food delivery space, where basically Uber and DoorDash specifically are exerting their power on the marketplace side to try and force merchants to use the fulfillment service, the last
Right.
mile fulfillment service that Uber and DoorDash provide. Why I think it's worse in the food delivery space is I think it's going to be tough for the FTC because, and this is like the whole thing. Lena Khan wrote this paper. I think she went to Columbia or Yale, where when she was a student there, saying, basically antitrust laws are wrong because it's not about harming consumers in the sense of saving them money or not, or like costing them money, because Amazon saves consumers money, but long term, this is, not a great relationship or situation for consumers. And so I think Amazon in this case will be able to point and say, look, like maybe we're trying to get merchants to use our last mile fulfillment, but that's because we can save consumers money. And in the food delivery space, though, we can save consumers money, like certifiably. We make delivery a lot cheaper by consolidating orders across the stack. We can make the last mile fulfillment a lot more efficient, a lot cheaper for the end consumer and for the merchant, by the way. But you have these apps, these companies essentially exerting their power on the consumer side, on the marketplace side, trying to exert their power to force merchants to use their last mile fulfillment. So I think there's a lot of parallels there, and I think they're even more favorable to Relay and other third party courier services in an antitrust sort of analysis. But yeah,
Fascinating. Yeah, we have to. I guess Lena Khan wants to look at the second order effects of like the diversity of the economy, right? It's
exactly.
like we want to have a vibrant mom and pop, presence when it comes to any kind of retail, right? We don't just see like Main Street completely void of anything that's not a VC backed, dental office or Blank Street Coffee or whatever the hell the next thing is, right? It's
Yeah.
let's have some real mom and pops thrive.
Yeah,
Same thing
that's
with
exactly
restaurants.
right. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
So I want to get into some of the parallels here, but I think I want to set it up with looking at like kind of the cost side of the supply.
Okay.
So I think talk to us about this horizontal batching. Let's just dive in a little bit more so people understand, right? And
Yep.
maybe we can look at like CloudKitchens as an example, because
Yep.
I've actually gone undercover as a driver for CloudKitchens, and I know that you see like all these different drivers checking in to the CloudKitchens from all these different apps, right? It could be
Yeah.
like first party first party Flip Dish or whatever, Uber, DoorDash, Grubhub, some stuff I haven't even heard of that like they integrate with. They're actually not on Flip Dish anymore. They built their own first party, but beside the point.
Yep.
It's super inefficient if ghost kitchens are going to be servicing like, let's call it a 5 mile radius as their core thing,
Yep.
or it could be even smaller in New York, right? 5 miles is
Yep.
like forever in New York.
Yep.
But depending on the city, just a fairly tight radius where I could get to you in about 20 minutes, 10 minutes to make the food, 15 minutes to make the food, another 10 minutes to deliver it, right? Get it in under 30 minutes to actually make that a reality. And actually make it so that the tenants are profitable and not paying so much commission, because the current break evens are about, Dan Fleischman from the Kitchen Fund did an estimate that's about $750,000 to break even in a ghost kitchen, maybe a little bit lower. It's like 650. Explain why it's so much more efficient to have a company like Relay come in and say, okay, you order on all these apps, but we're going to actually just consolidate this last mile piece to one set of couriers.
Yep. So, okay. For at one point, on one end, you have the savings that tenants would be able to capture from switching to self delivery and being charged a smaller commission on third party marketplaces. Something that's, I think, potentially unique to food. There's probably other applications, but really unique to food is there's 3 day parts. So there's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So a huge percentage or the majority of your orders are going to occur around 3 peaks, and then additionally you get, and this is maybe less so on the CloudKitchens example, but classically what happens is you get a Pareto distribution where a small percentage of your merchants get an outsized percentage of sales. So like the 80-20 rule. And so in the CloudKitchen example, though, you have all of these orders coming in at breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah.
And so if you have Uber sending one courier to pick up one order and DoorDash sending another courier to pick up yet another order, if those consumers are neighbors, then basically both services are paying somebody a minimum amount, which is really expensive, right? I think the stat is 50 or 60% of the cost of shipping something is the last mile. So the last mile is the most expensive component of delivering anything. And so you have two different workers going out of the world, getting paid a minimum amount by both of these apps to basically do the same job. Go to CloudKitchens, pick up 2 different orders, and then go to the same neighborhood, like not even zip code, right? Like 2 homes that are across the street from one another. And so with Relay, we in that example, we literally cut the cost of labor in half
Right.
because
Makes
we're
a ton of sense.
consolidating both of those orders. Yeah, we can send one courier and even pay that courier a little bit better than whatever they're making when it's just
Yeah.
Uber and DoorDash. We haven't spoken about our differentiated business model on the courier side, which is we match and exceed the tip minimum wage in any market that we're in.
Wow.
In New York, for example, we pay couriers $12.50 an hour.
That's just the
And so
base, guaranteed.
if you log into Relay and you do
Right.
no deliveries in 1 hour, you get $12.50.
Right.
But because we have this base pay, we are sort of forced to be as efficient as possible. We want to try
Right.
and have that courier fulfill as many orders in an hour as
Yeah.
they can. And so the result of this is we deliver 3.5 deliveries in an hour in New York.
Wow.
That's just on average.
Per
Whereas
courier.
Uber per courier per hour,
Mm-hmm.
the same stat for Uber and DoorDash is more like 1.5.
Wow.
And so we're way more efficient. Our couriers are making $30 an hour. I think the couriers so far this year, I was looking at it recently, it's like $32 an hour on average. That's on average. We have couriers that make $41 an hour,
Yeah.
making $80,000 a year.
Right. So this basically tells me that this delivery can be profitable if you have enough density of demand and you have enough density of supply. Meaning you have enough merchants that are located within the same kind of, not block, but maybe zip code, where you could easily like orchestrate that pickup. And then when you're dropping it off, you can do not a milk run, but a nice tight little run where you're dropping off the customer A, B, and C, picking up from maybe 2 or 3 merchants that are within a few blocks of each other. And who knows, maybe you could double that number at some point very soon. I mean, certainly with CloudKitchens and the amount of share that they have in certain zip codes of delivery, like their first location in West Adams, Los Angeles, I mean, they have a huge amount of that order flow already coming in.
Yeah.
If they just kicked out all the third-party marketplaces, or they made all their tenants turn on self-delivery, this would be game changer when it comes to the last mile, because you'd be seeing way over 3.5 deliveries per person per hour. You'd be seeing maybe double digits.
Yeah, I totally agree. And CloudKitchens has picked urban markets, I think, for a really good reason. And one thing to add though, right? Like I think you nailed it. You need density of order volume. Really, the name of the game for anything that's fulfillment is just order volume. And so if you have, I like question DoorDash. Like they are famously, they dominate in the suburbs, and to me that
Right.
seems a lot. And that seems a lot like going from a strip mall to pick up food, and then driving down the highway to sort of a subdivision to
Yeah.
drop that food off, and then sort of making a deadhead trip either back to that strip mall or to the next strip mall to sort of
Right.
do the same thing. And so I think
Yeah.
if you're a dasher, the amount of time that you spend sort of just driving around,
Yeah.
to a restaurant is pretty significant. For us, it's nothing.
Right.
Because of that, we seek that density. I don't know. I'm not saying Relay wouldn't be in the suburbs. I don't know if the unit economics shake out in the
Sure.
suburbs because of that problem.
Right. And this is why they're just having their customers request more products from other merchants, is to basically boost that utilization of that driver. So, okay, the driver can stop at 7-Eleven with this double dash thing, add on a, whatever, like a jug of Pepsi, because Pepsi's paying for an ad. And then
Totally.
voila, you've done your, you've faked your numbers to make the utilization look like something, but it's really just one customer. So it's like
Yep.
supply side density and its demand density. You need enough neighbors ordering in these areas.
I think, frankly, if you have the volume, the workers will come, essentially.
Yeah.
Like you're offering on the other side of the equation, you're offering somebody a job. And then it's just
Yeah.
an economics game.
No, and this is why it makes sense that this should not be siloed. That we need to, bust the walls down. So, on that thread, there's this controversy now around the minimum wage guarantee tip. Like without tips, New York City wants to essentially, or they did enforce a minimum wage requirement, and then it got essentially blocked. But this was almost $18, and it's going up to $20 or so in the next year. And this was a long battle, and all the third-party marketplaces are fighting it, and then you somehow got lumped into this. So I guess let's just start what are the implications of this for a service like yours? How will that impact restaurants and consumers?
Yeah. So Relay did get lumped in, even though we're really different than the other apps. And it's sort of funny, all the headlines don't even mention Relay. I mean, obviously we're a lot smaller than the other apps, but
right.
I think it's also a good it's descriptive. I don't think it's controversial. I think it's controversial that if you work for Uber, Uber gets away with paying you $10 an hour.
Yeah.
Which is what the DCWP found. We don't operate. That's not our model at all. I think it's controversial that Relay got lumped in. Our couriers we match and exceed. Sorry, we match the tip minimum wage in New York. So if you work for Relay, you get paid $12.50. You log off, you clock off, and then go clock in at the bagel store or the pizzeria where you work at as a delivery guy. You get paid $12.50. So we've always matched that. And again, with our higher utilization, it means that you end up making $30 an hour. We're almost tripling what the rest of the industry pays in the city. I sort of mysteriously, originally when this rule with this bill was drafted, Relay wasn't defined. We weren't part of it, and then mysteriously we we got added to the law. The implications for the consumers are going to be terrible from a financial perspective. I think if you're a consumer, you at least will know that couriers are going to be making a living wage, which is good, but you're going to have to pay for it. It's going to cost you a lot more money to order, fries or a burger. Right. What is, I think, profoundly unfair for Relay is because we've been lumped in, we don't have a consumer-facing app. All Uber, DoorDash, and Grubhub have to do is basically say, we have to pay couriers more money, right. So consumers, you need to pay us more.
They've done this before.
100%, the regulatory surcharge, right? And so they're just going to add a regulatory surcharge. It'll cost you $4 or $5 more that's what they're saying. I think it's $5 is what they're saying is going to cost you more to order, which is crazy because already the fees that these apps charge on the consumer side, I don't have to get into it. It very well documented. They're really, really high. So it's going to be higher somehow in New York. But Relay can't do that. We don't have a consumer-facing app. And so what this is going to force me to do is basically go to the 3,000 restaurants that we work with in New York and say, look, I'm so sorry. And with inflation and the pressures post-COVID that you're under, I have to raise my prices. And that's fine. But we're the only company that's going to have to do that. Uber, DoorDash, and Grubhub don't have to have that difficult conversation with merchants. They just raise the price of the consumer, and so it puts us at a huge disadvantage. Right. And I have to say we're sort of, that's the angle that we're taking. We obviously we firmly believe that couriers should be paid a fair wage. We already do that. We practice what we preach. We're paying them the $12.50 that they'd make if they work for a pizzeria. But I do think that it puts it at a massive disadvantage relative to the other apps, having to have that difficult conversation. And Matt, minimum wage has gone up over the years, so we've had to do these fee increases over the years. They're never fun, and they're on average they've been 25 cents. So we have to have blowout arguments with restaurant owners about 25 cents
per order.
In this case, the increase on average would be $1.60
per order.
So I don't even want to fathom the conversations I'd have with restaurant owners per order, $1.60. It's if we charge you $5 on average,
$6.60.
It would be $6 exactly. It's a 40% increase in the cost. Yeah. And so, and what concerns me more, I guess, is restaurant owners are going to say, look, in the past you've raised our prices 25 cents. This is just, you're raising us $1.60. You're getting greedy. Like, how much of
Yeah.
this is like going to end up in your pocket? And the reality is that no, like none of it. This is just so that we can continue to break even, kind of a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's that's really unfortunate that you're getting lumped in because you're B2B and these companies are consumer focused. They have a relationship where they're in the middle of the restaurant and the consumer. You're downstream or upstream, however you want to look at it, right? You don't have any pricing power. It's up to the restaurants to figure out how much they're going to subsidize and how much the customer's going to pay. And at the end of the day, they can take that 15% savings on the delivery, right? Going there from 30 to 15% with self-delivery, figure out how much of that 15% they want to subsidize the delivery. But if you make it too expensive, now you've just reduced the amount of, there's going to be some elasticity of demand, a ton of elasticity of demand. Not everyone in New York is a, multimillionaire that's going to be able to pay for all their meals that like essentially cost like $100.
Yep. This is absolutely going to put it in the realm of possible that if you order $20 worth of food, you're going to pay, easily 60% in fees just to get that $20 meal delivered.
Yeah.
Whether Relay is lumped in or not is sort of not the unfortunate part. What I think is the unfortunate part is the city has been basically they took a one size fits all approach to the solution. We are literally the first thing I said when I described Relay and today or anytime, it's like we are a B2B offering. We are fundamentally a different company than Uber and DoorDash, which are B2C. But still the city decided to lump everyone in together and I think that's a huge mistake. So that's why we're fighting it. I can't believe we are actually suing New York City, but here we are.
I'm sure there's a lot of things in your 10 years of doing this that you never thought would be you would never fathom as possible, but here we are. Fascinating. Yeah. I mean, I think for them, they're just looking at like the problem. It's but it's like, it feels like it's a constant whack-a-mole thing. And I'm not sure they'll ever be able to fix it. Right. And so to them, it's like, oh, how do we make sure these drivers, they're coming at it from, a noble cause, but like
totally
the how this gets solved and understanding like all the complicated web of this stuff that I've been spending the last couple of years just trying to understand myself. I put, this is, and I'm still, learning things every day, talking to you, etc. Like this is not an easy industry to be dealing with, and you can't just make blanket rules that don't look at the nuance. Anyway, we could have a whole episode about this, but I think it's pretty clear what's going on and understanding your place in the ecosystem. It's a lot clearer after, this conversation, like exactly where you sit. So thanks for sharing. I think that's a nice segue kind of as we come towards the end of the convo to just like look at your predictions, the future of food delivery of the next decade. Clearly everything is getting squeezed. Food costs are going up, so we have to rely on automation. Where do you think the biggest profit pools are going to exist? Is it real estate? Is it in this food supply chain? And then like, what will these companies, DoorDash, Uber Eats, Grubhub, look like in 10 years?
Yeah, I don't know. I really think my crystal ball is like essentially non-existent. I think whenever I try to do, these predictions, they really just don't pan out at all. But I will say, it seems to me, this is like, it's a terrible analogy, but like bear with me. Just crazy to me that two things. One, if you're McDonald's, or if you're Chipotle, or if you're the local, shawarma spot down the street, basically the flavor of DoorDash and Uber that you get is like almost identical. Like it's like what you see when you're in the restaurant is like almost the same. So that's one thing that I think is crazy to me. The other, and there's nuance there, Matt. Like I know, like on the tech stack and the integrations and whatnot, there's nuance there, but it's really similar. What is I think still in the early innings is this is just so consolidated. And it's like if you were to get into hobby, like flying in like remote control airplanes, like you'd probably start by going and buying, something off the shelf that came with the remote control, and the airplane is like all assembled. All you have to do is add batteries and like you're flying. This is, I know, a terrible analogy. What part of what we offer, and obviously this is self-serving, but part of what we offer is starting to modularize this stack. And a lot of people are doing it on the software side, on like the ordering and funneling everything into, you mentioned Charlie and Checkmate and modular, sorry, like exactly consolidating the front ends and whatnot. And so I think the future is a lot more options on both ends of the spectrum, on the front end and on the front end of the consumer end, and also on the logistics side of being able to choose really like your adventure. And right now, it is not choose your adventure. It's basically like you work with Uber, you work with DoorDash, and your negotiating strategy is to basically ask them really nicely to give you, like if you're a big brand, if you're a restaurant, to try to knock them down a couple of points in terms of their commission. And so just like really simple. It's like a very simplistic approach currently. So I think that's going to get more sophisticated. I hope it will sophisticate because we are a part of that future.
Do you see these guys? Do you see more vertical integration happening? Like, do you see tech companies becoming food companies, or do you think there will be like a line in the sand where it's like, we don't want to touch that?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think the market has rewarded software plays so strongly that I think it's tough. Like it would catch me off guard if like all of a sudden Toast, for example, decides to like spin up a delivery, like with boots on the ground. I wouldn't see that one coming. Maybe now that I said that, that's going to happen and that'd be good. But that again, historically, just like the multiples that you get on the software side have been just so phenomenal that I think if that's your world, you're going to try to stick to it. But like for us, maybe the multiples aren't as handsome, but it's really difficult. And so I think doing difficult things, if you do them well, there's great reward.
Yeah, I think there's a huge identity. I've said this a lot of times. I think there's a huge identity crisis in food tech, inherently in the name food and tech, oil and water. You got to pick which one you are. Like, I don't want to call out Wonder again, but I will. Wonder, you're just a restaurant. You're not Amazon, it's just like, it's very clear, like where's the line here? It's like build your own tech doesn't make you a tech company. Anyway, I digress. Alex, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for coming on. If restaurants listening to this want to sign up with Relay, tell us how they can get started. And then if maybe drivers are listening to this, tell them where they can get started as well.
Restaurants that are listening to this, feel free to reach out to me, alex@relay.com, relay.delivery, or sales@relay.delivery. And then for couriers, we have on our website, you just go there and there's you sign me up as a courier page and go through the application process. It takes less than a minute.
Amazing. Well, rooting for you. Thank you so much for coming on. I'll be following this whole New York City mess very closely. So good luck with all of that, and we'll have to check in soon.
Thanks, Matt. We're following it as well, obviously. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks. Thanks for tuning in. If you like what you hear, please hit subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. And if you're curious to get a first-hand look at the cutting edge of food and tech, check out hungry.tv. That's Hungry with no U, where you can join in on live conversations like these or sign up for the free weekly newsletter.